Grayville wasn't a city for secrets. It was the kind of place where every smile hid a story, and every corner whispered rumors. On the surface, it looked quaint. Modern glass buildings brushing against old brick stores. But underneath, tension brewed like an untold legend. Everyone knew everyone, but that didn't mean they trusted each other. Dana Carter knew this better than most. Walking out of her favorite downtown cafe, she adjusted her coat against the crisp afternoon chill. Her steps were poised, her presence quiet but confident. As the wife of Commissioner Ethan Carter, she could have flaunted status. But that wasn't Dana. She liked blending in, savoring her anonymity like a secret weapon. Her car was parked nearby, just a few strides away, but as she neared it, an unsettling scene unfolded. Two police officers, Blake and Thomas, pulled up fast, their cruiser sliding to a stop in her path. Their eyes were sharp, almost predatory. "Excuse me, ma'am," Blake said, voice tight as a drawn wire. "We need to ask you a few questions." Dana stopped, confusion creasing her brow. "Is something wrong, officers?" Her voice stayed calm, but her pulse quickened. Blake exchanged a glance with Thomas. It wasn't friendly. Thomas stepped closer, his eyes scanning her like she was a puzzle missing a piece. "Reports of suspicious activity in this area," he said. "We need to search you." Dana blinked. "Suspicious activity? I just came from the cafe. Is there a specific reason you think I'm involved?" She kept her tone polite, but unease prickled beneath the surface. Blake crossed his arms, narrowing his eyes. "Are you refusing a search?" "No," she said, careful and measured. "But I'd like to know why I'm being targeted. Do you have any reason to suspect me?" Thomas didn't answer. He just stepped closer, handcuffs glinting in the afternoon light. "Turn around," he ordered, voice cold. Shock flared in Dana's eyes. "You're cuffing me? For what? I haven't done anything." Blake's expression hardened. "Turn around. Don't make this more difficult than it has to be." Pedestrians scurried by, heads down, avoiding the scene like it was a contagious disease. No one wanted to get involved. Dana's shoulders squared, her pride battling humiliation. Slowly, she turned, feeling the icy steel of the cuffs snap around her wrists. Thomas's search was rough, invasive, his hands tugging at her coat, rifling through her purse. Each motion felt like an accusation, a silent verdict. She swallowed hard, fighting back the sting of tears. She wasn't a criminal, she'd done nothing wrong. But here she was, being treated like one. Her only crime? Being a black woman in the wrong place at the wrong time. Thomas stepped back, finishing the search. Blake's gaze bore into her. "Sure you're not hiding anything, lady?" Dana's jaw tightened. "I'd like to call my husband," she said, her voice steady but edged with steel. Blake chuckled, a humorless sound. "Yeah, and who's your husband?" Go ahead, let's see who he is." Without a word, Dana pulled out her phone, dialing with her hands still slightly shaking. "You'll find out soon enough." The call barely rang twice before a deep, authoritative voice answered. "Dana, what's wrong?" Relief flooded her. "They're searching me, Ethan. Officers Blake and Thomas. I just left the cafe and they're treating me like a suspect." She glanced at the officers, who now seemed less smug, more impatient. There was a pause on the line. Sharp, loaded. Then Ethan's voice, calm but dangerous. "Where are you?" "Olive and Maple," she replied, breathing a little steadier. "I haven't done anything, but they—" "I'll be there in 5 minutes," Ethan cut in, the promise in his voice like iron. She hung up, standing taller. Strength surged back into her spine. Ethan was coming. He'd handle this. But the sting of being reduced to a suspect still pulsed fresh, raw. Blake paced, his confidence fading. A black SUV appeared in the distance, approaching fast. It skidded to a stop, and the door flung open. Ethan Carter emerged, every inch the commanding figure in his uniform. eyes blazing with fury. Blake and Thomas froze, recognition dawning too late. "Commissioner Carter," Blake stammered, starting to speak. Ethan's glare silenced him. "Step aside," he ordered, voice sharp enough to cut. They moved without hesitation, suddenly uncertain, their arrogance deflated. Ethan turned to Dana, his eyes softening. "Are you all right?" His voice, for her, was gentle, a stark contrast to the fury he'd unleashed moments ago. Wasn't that just sweet, darlings?" She nodded, but the ache of the experience still simmered, a reminder of the battle she hadn't chosen but couldn't escape. "I'm fine," Dana replied, her voice steady, but her eyes flicked back to the officers, who now stood rigid, their confidence evaporating. Ethan's face hardened as he turned toward them, his presence commanding. "You two," he said, his voice like ice, "start talking, explain yourselves." Blake shifted uneasily, throwing a nervous glance at Thomas, who remained silent, jaw clenched tight. "We had reports of suspicious activity, sir," Blake stammered. "She matched the description." Ethan's eyes narrowed, the fire in them turning deadly. "Matched the description of what?" His voice was dangerously calm. "Did she resist? Did she threaten you in any way?" "Oh, sir," Thomas muttered, barely audible, his gaze dropping to the ground. The once buzzy street had quieted, the crowd now a sea of silent spectators, eyes locked on the unfolding scene. Ethan stepped closer, his voice dropping to a razor-sharp edge. "Then why did you feel the need to harass her? Was it because she's black? Was that the only reason you had?" The accusation hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and electric. Blake's voice shook. "Sir, we were just following protocol." Ethan's glare intensified. "Your protocol is broken," he shot back, his tone slicing through the silence, "and you're about to face the consequences." The tension thickened, wrapping around the officers like a noose. They knew they'd crossed a line, one they couldn't erase. Without breaking his cold, unwavering stare, Ethan pulled out his phone and dialed. His voice was calm, but carried the weight of judgment. "I need internal affairs officers Blake and Thomas, effective immediately. Suspend them until further notice." Blake's face went pale, the blood draining away. "Sir, we didn't mean—" he started. But Ethan cut him off with a glare that could freeze fire. "Didn't mean to—" "What?" Ethan's voice was deadly. "Didn't mean to harass my wife? Didn't mean to treat her like she was less than human? Or didn't mean to get caught?" Thomas finally spoke, his voice shaking. It was a mistake, sir. We were just doing our job." Ethan's eyes bore into him. "A mistake?" His voice dropped lower, every word a hammer. "A mistake that could have turned deadly. Do you think that's an excuse?" The crowd watched, some whispering, others silent, as the weight of accountability unfolded. Internal affairs officers arrived quickly, pulling Blake and Thomas aside, their previous bravado now replaced with fear and regret. Dana stood next to Ethan, her shoulders squared but eyes filled with a quiet sadness. Relief washed over her, but the sting of the experience lingered. Judged not by her actions, but by the color of her skin, it was a bitter pill. Ethan turned to her, the steel in his eyes softening. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," he said, voice gentle. "It won't happen again." Dana gave a small, weary smile. "Thank you for coming. I didn't know what else to do." "You did the right thing," Ethan reassured her, his arm wrapping protectively around her shoulders. "And now they'll face the consequences." As they walked away from the scene, the weight of what had just happened settled over Grayville. The whispers of onlookers filled the air, a story they wouldn't soon forget. The wife of the police commissioner, harassed without cause, had seen justice served swiftly and publicly. The message was clear. No one, not even those who wore the badge, stood above the law. Thanks for watching till the end. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you won't miss more powerful stories like this. Have a great day.